But what really grabs most people is the community, really, more than just the flat information. Because as Tittle was mentioning that you can just go to GameFAQs if you just wanted a straight walkthrough. But the interaction, the community is what really gets people, and I think that's in part because that's why Con's been successful, is because of that community that is oriented around the people. Okay, well, let's go on. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you started answering the question was about the HAS, but it's very much about the content of the website. Like you said, there was information for the games itself, and then you got the community, but do you actually host anything else that's related to the series, or it's pretty much it? Like, for example, are you hosting fan art, fanfic, stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. We host fan art for every game in the Square Enix canon now. As I mentioned before, we've totally revamped the section that powers that in the last year, so it's much easier and much faster for users to submit art and get it up on the site. We have less than a day turnaround on every fan art that is submitted to us. So if you submit it and it can get up there, then it's going to get up there, and it's going to be fast.
As opposed to before, when we post in the forums for fan art, and I'd post something, like 3 months later, oh, hey, there's my picture.
I don't really feel that you were obligated to say that, but she is right.
But
and we also, in terms of the fan art, have a commenting system that both runs through the forums and the site itself. So you can look at a piece of art and comment on it right on that same page, or if you prefer browsing the forums, you can find the same art in the forums and comment on it from there. It just kind of is more of a bridge so we can get artists and the community that will appreciate their art together and talking to each other. Down the road, we'd like to do something similar with fan fiction. Our fanfic section is still slow and is not quite as heavily trafficked by either visitors or writers as our fan art section.
That's because you need more Cloud and Sephiroth fic.
Well, of course. Yeah,
the bane of humanity.
About the stand, I don't think that's really relevant here. But yeah.
Okay.
But we'd love. I'm trying to think of the most diplomatic way to put this. Fanfiction has never been something that I have been into significantly myself, though I did try to write and abort one long, long ago that somebody probably could find.
I was going to mention that if you did submit it yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was a much younger man then. I think it's very important to the community, and I think that there are a lot of people that appreciate it, even if maybe I don't share that same appreciation, and therefore I think it's important to get it out there. We're trying to make it so everybody has something that they like about Con, and whether that's fan art, whether that's fan fiction, whether that's the quality of the forums, whether it's just the quality of the content, and they come, they use it, they beat the game they're playing, they don't ever come back. We don't like to see that, but we can appreciate it, and we want to make sure that even those users are getting the best experience possible.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Well, let's go on to a new
Fair
section.
enough.
We're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy series as a whole, so you two boys, Mr. Cyan and Mr. Nightshade, you can always pipe in with questions too. This is addressed to either Mr. 5-1 or Mr. Tittles. What are your thoughts on the remakes and re-releases that have been coming out recently, since I know that Con has covered some of these?
Well,
We
they
have
give us a
covered
lot
couple.
of work to do.
Yeah,
That's one thing we feel about them.
Yeah, we certainly groan whenever a new one is announced because it just kind of goes on top of the pile. It's hard to let a new release for a game that we cover go by unnoticed, but unfortunately over the years we have had to miss a couple. The ones that we have been able to pick up on, though, notably Chrono Trigger DS and also Final Fantasy IV Advance, I think we've done a stellar job with them, and I think that the maturity of that content is something that is hard to do and something that we couldn't have done 5 or 10 years ago, but now it gets right to it. I should also think that this is a good time to mention that we always welcome help in building these game coverage sections. A lot of you guys out there know the games far better than we do. Our skills are technological, and the two of us don't have a whole lot of time to play games anymore, really, especially not games that are as involving as something from the Final Fantasy series. So that is another aspect of the community where we welcome, solicit, and beg for any help in developing data that we possibly can get.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I think the
remix is
re-releases
something...
are kind of a good thing to have in general. It's a lot of people weren't around in 1994 when Final Fantasy VI came out, and there's probably a whole generation there who've never had a Super Nintendo, and it's good to see the games sort of turning up on platforms where people, new people to the series might pick them up and get interested. But I'm not so sure about some of the new content they add into them, but it's good to have the original game around at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and in most cases, not the PlayStation remake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes me think about it. Technically, have you made a cover about the Final Fantasy 3 DS remake? Because even if it's technically a remake, it's actually the first Final Fantasy 3 game that we got on this side.
Yeah.
Like, do you count it as a remake for you, or is actually the full release cover?
Oh, I think that it's absolutely something that we need to consider as something that's brand new to Western Shores. I know that a lot of the people that were really interested in playing it played it long ago, and I don't condone that, by the way, you dirty thieves. I'm kidding about that, by the way. But yes, I think it's something that's unique to the West, and I understand that it technically is a remake. But at the same time, it's not. It's an odd hybrid that I think we can look at from either direction.
Right. So how does everybody in general feel about these re-releases? Because I know how I feel is it almost, most of them I played when I was younger, when the game was first new. For example, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy II. I first played it in 1991. I was still in 5th grade, I think. And played it and really liked it, and of course bought it by the time I got to 6th grade. But there's a lot of people whose first Final Fantasy wasn't until the PlayStation or even the PlayStation 2 era, to where, that's the first Final Fantasy they played, so they missed all of it. And
like
this
me?
is
like exactly,
you,
like Tittles,
right?
or virtually anybody in Europe. I think that, from my own personal point of view, most of these remakes are not getting me to open my checkbook. That's kind of an archaic phrase, and I apologize to all you youngsters out there who have never seen a checkbook. I think that they're still very important to have, though. Just as you say, this opens up an opportunity for people who have not experienced these games, and they truly are good games. And there are things that people should at least try at some point. Right. And if you have to do that on a DS, if you have to do that on a Game Boy Advance, if you have to do that on an old PlayStation that you pick up at a garage sale, I recommend you do it. And, it's different strokes for different folks. Just because I'm not running out to buy a DS doesn't mean that there's not a very strong reason for these remakes happening.
But yes, to me that's one of the appeals that I'm sure it is also with Nightshade, because I think you're of course a little bit younger than the rest of us. That to where you probably didn't play it on the Super Nintendo, did you? A lot of these games, Mr. Nightshade.
Actually, the first one I played was 7, but I actually went to the Nintendo ones after.
Okay, so but your first experience was that PlayStation generation, correct?
Yeah, well, technically, I wasn't much into RPG games until I saw someone play Final Fantasy VII, and then I actually started to have fun with them. And then after years and years, I ended up being a nerd and ended up playing Final Fantasy XI, which pretty much sealed my fate.
Uh-oh. Well, speaking of that, the Final Fantasy XI, what about continuing with these new sequels and those new titles that keep coming out? This is open up to anybody. Hey, Mr. Cyan, you haven't had anything to say yet. What have you about that question?